Contract documents. The general conditions contain those contract provisions applicable to most construction contracts written by the owner. The special conditions contain any additional contract provisions applicable to the specific project. So the difference between the general conditions and the special conditions of the contract is that the general conditions are applicable to more than one project. So many of those general conditions are common in several projects, but special conditions are particular only to the specific project. So the Associated General Contractors of America, in cooperation with the American Institute of Architects, the American Society of Civil Engineers, and the other professional organizations, has developed standard construction contract provisions and a number of associated forms. The use of such standard contract forms minimizes the amount of legal review that the contractor must perform before signing a contract. So yeah, this is useful for the contractor to use these standard contract forms, because in this case the contractor will have to read less number of documents, because for the standard contract forms they may already be familiar with those documents, and then only a few new documents may have to be read. However, even if the contractor is familiar with the standard contract forms being used, care must be taken to fully evaluate all special conditions as well as the plans and specifications. However, of course, it is not that easy job than said, because even if the contractor is familiar, then there will be a lot of other things that will be different. For example, many of the special conditions of the contract, and of course the plans and specifications are more or less different for each project. Construction contracts may contain a value engineering clause. Okay, so the value engineering is the analysis of a design with the objective of accomplishing this required function at a lower cost. So this is the objective of the value engineering. So in those situations, the contractor may be encouraged to perform such an analysis of the design of the project, in which the contractor may propose some solution for a certain feature of the project at a lower cost. So that is the value engineering. So the objective may be expressed as eliminating the gold plating. So it can also be said that you can remove such items which may not be adding any real value to the project. So they may be items such as like gold plated items, only shiny at the surface, but in reality those items may not be very much value adding. So that gold plating items could be eliminated by the value engineering. So this may be the objective of the value engineering. When included in a construction contract, a value engineering clause encourages the contractor to propose changes in the project that will reduce project cost without affecting the ability of the facility to perform its intended function. So of course, if we are reducing the cost of the project using the value engineering, it will not mean that we will be reducing the performance, the real performance, or the desired, or that performance which matters for the project. So without affecting the ability of the facility to perform its intended function. So the project should still be doing its function, okay, even if some of the costs may be reduced using the value engineering. So value engineering in this case is a useful process which can be performed in the project. So the cost savings resulting from the value engineering proposals accepted by the owner are shared between the contractor and the owner on the basis specified in the contract. So whatever are the cost savings, so for example, if the cost savings are there, then of course the owner have to pay less cost. However, not everything is taken by the owner. So those cost savings, if they are already specified in the contract, the basis of those cost savings, if it is already specified in the contract, these cost savings will be shared between the owner and the contractor. The usual clause prescribes a 50-50 split between the owner and the contractor. So usually it takes that half the savings will be taken by the owner, the half the savings are taken by the contractor. Okay, the contract time. So the time allowed as expressed as either days allowed or as a required completion date for completion of a construction project is normally specified in the contract along with the phrase time is of essence. So the contract time, so of course the project has contract is for a project and the project has a specified duration. Okay, so that duration has to be mentioned in the contract. If no completion date is specified, a reasonable time as interpreted by the courts is allowed. So sometimes the contracts do not mention the completion date. So in case of any claims or in case of any dispute, so the courts interpret as some reasonable time for the completion of the project. If the phrase time is of essence is included in a contract and the project is not completed within the specified time, so the contractor is liable for any damages, monetary loss incurred by the owner as a result of the late completion. So this time is of essence is a very important clause. So this means that it signifies that the contractor must complete the project on time and there should not be delayed occur. If the delays will occur, then the contractor will be liable for any damages, which may be in most cases will be the monetary losses incurred by the contractor. So then there are of course other repercussions for this situation as well. So in such a case, the courts will hold the contractor responsible for the actual damages that the owner incurs because the project has been delayed. A clause related to that is called as the liquidated damages clause in the contract may be used to simplify the process of establishing the amount of damages resulting from the late completion. So liquidated damages clause is simply the clause in which says that if the project is delayed as a fault of the contractor will pay the owner certain amount as a compensation for the delay in the project. So such a clause will specify the amount of damages to be paid by the contractor to the owner for each day of the late completion. If challenged in the court, the owner must prove that the amount of liquidated damages specified in the contract reasonably represents the owner's actual cost. So sometimes the contractor can challenge that these liquidated damages are not justified. So in that case, the owner must prove in the court that these liquidated damages are reasonable and they represent the owner's actual loss. Okay. If the liquidated damages are shown to be reasonable, the courts will sustain their enforcement. So in that case, if the courts consider that the damages given in the damages mentioned in the contract are reasonable, so then the court will decide in favor of the owner. So the construction contracts normally contain provisions for time extension to the contract due to circumstances beyond the control of the contractor. So on the other hand, if there are some circumstances such as in the case of fire, floods, etc., and strikes, so these things or some of these changes in which the owner have directed the changes and then the project is delayed due to these reasons, then in those situations the contracts allow the extension of the time. So that means the contractor is allowed to complete the project in extended time. The purpose of such provisions is, of course, to reduce contractors' risk from events beyond their control. So it is very obvious that the contractor has no control over those events such as fire, floods, etc. So therefore, the clause is such that it can allow the contractor to complete the project in extended time. If such provisions were not included, the contractor would have to increase the bid price to cover such risks. So sometimes if such provisions are not given, that means it is not mentioned that the contractor will allow the extension of time in such events, then of course the contractor will increase the bid price to cover such costs. So it will be too risky for the contractor to do for that project. So it may even be then more expensive for the owner to ask the contractor to bid for that project. So the bid price will be increased to cover such risks. The owner is financially responsible to the contractor for any owner caused delays. So on the other hand, the owner is also responsible. It is not like if there is a contractor's fault and then the contractor will have to pay the liquidated damages. But on the other hand, if there is a fault from the owner's side, then the contractor, the owner may be financially responsible for the contractor to the contractor for any damages or caused as a result of the owner's fault. Okay, so now let's talk about the other contract documents, which are the plans and specifications. Plans are construction plans, and these are normally called as the drawings that show the location, dimensions, and details of the work to be performed. So this is how we can define the plans. Okay. And specifications are construction technical specifications, provide the detailed requirements for the materials, equipment, and workmanship to be incorporated into the project. So plans and specifications are complementary to each other. So without specifications, we cannot fully understand the plans. And then similarly, without the plans, of course, specifications will have not very meaningful presence. On the other hand, there are some additional drawings in addition to those construction plans and drawings. There are shop drawings and samples as well. So we will look at these one by one later on. So plans. So plans are called as the construction plans. They are drawings that show the location, dimensions, and details of the work to be performed. Taken together with the specifications, they should provide a complete description of the facility to be constructed. So both specifications and plans complement each other. And then if some item is mentioned in the plans, its necessary details may not be its complete details may not be present in the plans. So those details may have to be consulted from the specifications. So type of the contract drawings include the site drawings and the detailed working drawings. So the contract drawings are usually organized and numbered according to the specialty, such as the structural drawings, electrical drawings, mechanical drawings, and even the architectural drawings. On the other hand, the specifications, construction technical specifications, provide the detailed requirements for the materials. So specifications are about the requirements for the materials, equipment, workmanship to be incorporated into the project. And the contract drawings and specifications complement each other and must be used together, as I have just said before. An item need not be shown on both the plans and specifications to be required. So if an item can be shown on the plan, therefore it may not be needed to be shown again in the specifications. So therefore, it is necessary to consider both the plans and the specification. It should not be assumed that if the item is present in the plans, it will be also present in the specifications. So frequently the item may be identified only on one of these documents. So therefore, we should be careful about this aspect. However, when the provisions of the plans and specifications conflict, the general conditions of the contract generally provide that the requirements of the specification will govern. So, in that situations, if in the plans and specifications, if same items have been presented, but in a different way, there is a conflict between them, then specifications will govern the plan. So this is the rule. In the absence of such a provision, the courts have commonly held that the requirements of the specifications will govern. So the courts also say that the specifications will govern. The two basic ways in which the requirements for a particular operation may be specified are by the method of method specification or by performance specifications. So now there are two kinds of specifications. Specifications which describe the method, or the specifications which describe the requirements for the performance. So which type of specifications are used for certain purposes? It depends on how the specifications have been written. So a method specification states the precise equipment and procedure to be used in performing a construction operation. So when the specification says that you have to use this kind of equipment, this kind of material, and then you should perform the work, so that is called as the method specifications. On the other hand, the performance specifications, or the result and end result specification, specifies only the result to be achieved and leaves to the contractor the choice of equipment and method. So in the performance specification, it says that, okay, I want this kind of result. You achieve it by whatever method you can apply. So that is called as the performance specification. The recent years have seen an increase in the use of performance specifications. So nowadays, compared with the method specifications, performance specifications are being used more, because more freedom is being given to the contractor to achieve the task, or maybe the owner has more reliance on the ability of the contractor to perform the task. So specifications writers should avoid specifying both method and the performance specifications for the same operation. So it will be either one type of specifications should be mentioned, or it should not be like you are also describing the method specification, you are also describing that how you are going to do it, and you also say that I want this kind of performance level. So both the use of both types of specifications at the same time should be avoided. When both requirements are used and satisfactory results are not obtained after utilizing the specified method, a dispute based on impossibility of the performance will invariably result. So the format most widely used for construction specifications consists of 16 divisions as organized in table 1. So this format was developed by the Construction Specifications Institute and is usually identified as the CSI format, or Uniform System for Building Specifications. So this is a table for the organization of the uniform system of building specifications. So usually the building works can be divided into these 16 divisions. So starting from the general requirements, site work, concrete, masonry, metals, wood and plastics, thermal and moisture protection, doors and windows, finishes, specialties, equipment, furnishings, special construction, conveying systems, mechanical, and electrical. So you can see that more or less all of these divisions have their own special meanings. And in this way, if the specifications or the requirements related to these items are organized, then it has provided a very useful basis for the contractors to uh, perform the work, to also find the cost of the work, to estimate the work. Okay, so shop drawings and samples. So earlier we discussed about the plans and the specifications. So in addition, there are shop drawings and samples, which are the drawings, charts, and other data prepared by a contractor or supplier, which describe the detailed characteristics of equipment or show how specific structural elements or items of equipment are to be fabricated and installed. So the construction drawings normally will not say that how certain equipment or component of the building will be installed. It will be the responsibility of the contractor to install it. But in order to illustrate how they are going to install it, they have to prepare the shop drawings. And then sometimes they also have to provide the samples of the materials which they are going to install into the project for the approval. So the approval of the shop drawings and samples is also a very important step when performing the work on the construction site. Thus, they complement but do not replace the drawings. So, shop drawings complement the contract drawings, because it is the contract drawing. It is the contract drawing which will tell that certain kind of work have to be performed, but how that work have to be performed, the details of that work, and how that the details of that work will be provided through the shop drawings. And on the other hand, also the samples of the materials also have to be provided by the contractor. And these together, the shop drawings and the samples, these are also called sometimes as the submittals as well. So samples are physical examples of materials, equipment, or workmanship which are submitted to the owner for approval prior to their incorporation in a project. So, for example, a paint may be the sample of the paint may be submitted to the owner or its representative for the approval. So these are called as the samples. So the contract documents should contain the specific requirements for submission of shop drawings and samples. So of course there are, because these are quite important in the contracts, the shop drawings and samples, so there are specific requirements for them. So some suggested provisions include the following. So what are those provisions regarding the shop drawings and samples? First of all, identification of items requiring samples or shop drawings. So there will be numerous items in the project which may need the shop drawings, and they may require the samples, submission of the samples. So procedure for submission of shop drawings, including format, marking and number, and distribution of copies. And the procedure for submission of samples, including size and number required. And then eliminating the requirement for shop drawings and samples when standard catalog items are to be used. So sometimes the shop drawings and samples may not need to be provided. In those situations, the standard catalog items may be already being specified by the owner or their representative. Okay, so let's now talk about the contract administration. So how the contract is administered. So it consists of the progress reports and payment. Some aspects of the changes and delays will be also discussed. Acceptance and the final payment will be also discussed. Claims and disputes, contract termination. Okay. So first of all, progress reports and payment. So the construction contracts commonly require the contractor to submit a proposed progress schedule to the owner shortly after the contract is awarded. So this project schedule has to be submitted by the contractor to the owner shortly after the contract is awarded. Based on this schedule, the owner will measure the performance of the contractor and will also estimate how much work has been done, and based on that estimate the payments to the contractor will be made. So upon approval by the owner or the owner's representative, this schedule forms the basis of judging the contractor's progress towards the project completion. This is just what I have just said. And the contract may require the contractor to submit the plan and schedule in the CPM format, and may also require periodic updating of the schedule as work progresses. So a standard requirement is to submit the schedule in the schedule which is based on the critical path method. And of course, nowadays the project planning and scheduling software are used. So all of these software uses the critical path method approach. So the owner's representative must continuously evaluate the contractor's performance progress to keep the owner informed and to provide a basis for the approval of the contractor's requests for progress payments. So of course the progress payments to the contractor will be made based on the work which the contractor has performed on the site, and that work which the contractor has performed will at the site will be measured against the work which was scheduled. So only then the progress report will be verified and the progress payments will be made. So the failure of the contractor to attain a satisfactory rate of progress may provide the basis for termination of the contract by the owner. So one of the advantage of this progress the project schedule will be that it will be easier to judge the progress of the contractor, and if the progress of the contractor based on the project schedule may be too tardy, too slow, then of course that will be one of the basis for the termination of the contract by the owner. For projects expected to require more than a few months to complete, it is customary for the owner to make progress payments to the contractor. So normally for a long-term projects, the payments to the contractor are made on the progress basis. So normally monthly payments. Progress payments are made at the interval specified in the contract, usually monthly or upon completion of certain milestones. So there can be various provisions, monthly basis or on the completion of certain important tasks in the project, which are called as the milestones. So the payment is customarily made for the work completed, materials delivered to the work site, and work prefabricated but not yet incorporated into the project. So finished work completed is easier to quantify, but of course there are some requirements for the finished completion of the work, which may be the delivery of the material at the work site, and the some of the prefabricated work which has not yet been incorporated into the project, that may also form the basis for the payments to the contractor. So it is customary to withhold a percentage of the value of the work completed as a guarantee against the defective work, and to ensure that the remaining work can be completed within the unpaid amount of the contract. So the withholding of the certain percentage of the work is can provide some sort of guarantee to the owner for the defective work by the contractor. So the amount withheld is referred to as retainage or retention. So a retainage of 10% is rather typical. So, but it can be any amount like 5% or 10% is more typical. Okay, now let's talk about the changes and delays. So it is rare indeed if a construction project is completed without changes being made. So changes in the construction project are very frequent. So it will be very rare that if any project has been completed without any changes during the execution of the project. The usual construction contract contains a clause authorizing the owner or the owner's representative to order changes to the project within the general scope of the contract. So since changes are so frequent, there are special clauses which facilitate the incorporation of changes into the project. So the document directing such change is referred to as a change order. So a change order is the document which authorizes the change in the project or a change in the contract of the project. The contract also provides that an equitable adjustment in the time and contract value will be made for such changes. So the change order means change in the time or change in the money, or change in time and change in money, change in the cost as well. So both the time and cost may be changed as a result of the change order. The majority of changes are due to the design modifications initiated by the owner or the designer. So it has been found that most of the time the owner may want the project may want some changes into the project as a result of their requirement, or uh, the owner may just want to change something into the project. So therefore some of the designs will be changed. So when the design is changed, then uh, the change order may be issued or to incorporate that change into the project. So, however, change orders may also be used to formalize adjustments to the contract required by the site conditions, differing from those anticipated at the time of contract award, commonly referred to as changed conditions. So, changes are not only being directed by the owner or their representative, but the changes uh, may also happen as a result of the conditions on the site, not as those which were mentioned in the construction documents. So these are called as the changed conditions. So minimize disputes, all change orders issued should contain an adjustment in contract time and price which is mutually acceptable to the contractor and the owner. So since the changes in the project may affect the time and cost of the project, so such changes into the time and cost of the project should be mutually acceptable to the contractor and the owner. However, it is frequently not possible to delay issuing a change order until such an agreement has been reached without delaying the work in progress. So as a result, many change orders are issued before an agreement has been reached on the corresponding price and time adjustments. So the time it takes to realize the effect of those changes in the project is very uh, important over here. So therefore, Many times the change orders are issued before an agreement has been made, has been reached on the corresponding price and time adjustments. So agreements must therefore be reached later as work progresses, or the item will end up as a dispute. So such changes into the project should be settled during the project as early as is practicable. Otherwise, later on, those changes may end up being disputed because those changes may not have been agreed upon between the contractor and the owner. In estimating the cost associated with a change or owner-caused delay, the contractor must be careful to evaluate its effect on other project activities. So, change in one item is typically not the change in that item only. The change in one item may also change or affect the other items in the project. So, therefore, overall change into the project must be evaluated. Okay. So, frequently, it will be found that the changes or delay in one activity will necessitate changes in resource allocation or progress on other activities that result in additional project cost. And these costs are sometimes referred to as consequential costs because they have been resulted as a consequence of some other change in some other activities. So changes and delays. To obtain reimbursement of consequential costs, the contractor must be able to document their existence. So sometimes it is very difficult to claim those consequential costs by the contractor. So the contractor must keep a full record of the events happened on the site, which may have affected those changes, and as a result, consequential costs may have to be incurred to the contractor. A CPM network is a valuable aid in identifying and justifying consequential costs. So we go back to the critical path method network, CPM schedule, which may provide a very basic tool to analyze the situations or changes in the project. So delays in the orderly progress of a construction project may result from a multitude of causes. So since of course changes most likely cause the delays, so the delays can be caused by a number of reasons. Okay, so the three general categories of delays include those beyond the control of either the contractor or the owner, so acts of God, okay, those under the control of the owner, and those under the control of the contractor. So normally the such first kind of delays, that is those beyond the control of either the contractor or the owner, are called as the excusable delays. Those under the control of the owner are called as the compensable delays, and those under the control of the contractor are called as the non-excusable delays. So in some of the documents represent these kind of delays by these terminologies. So in the case of fire, flood, earthquake, or other disaster and strikes, a compensating time extension to the contract will be made. So in case of the excusable delays, normally the time extension to the contract is given. In the case of owner caused delays, any financial compensation to the contractor would be provided by the contractor's insurance, not by the owner. In that case of when the delay is occurring in the case of fire, earthquake, and those acts of God, that such as those kind of delays are called as the excusable delays. So financial compensation in those situations can be covered by the contractor's insurance, but normally the owner only provides the extension of time in those situations. If the owner is responsible for the delay, such as by the late delivery of the owner provided equipment, the owner must compensate the contractor for any additional costs incurred, as well as provide an appropriate time extension to the contract. So in those situations, since it is obvious that the delay has been caused by the owner, so the owner will compensate both financially and as well as by the extension of the time if there is any delay in the project as a result of those delay acts caused by the owner. On the other hand, if the delay is under the control of the contractor, then of course no compensation or the time extension is provided to the contractor. Rather, the contractor is responsible for reimbursing the owner for any damages, actual or liquidated, resulting from the delay. So the damages can be the actual damages or the liquidated damages. Actual damages are those actual costs for which we can determine the amount of the damages. Liquidated damages are just the estimated damages, and these liquidated damages may be set up into the contract on per day or per month or per week basis if the delay in the project occurs. So, but in any case, the liquidated damages, as it has been also mentioned before, should realistically represent the damages of the owner. So those liquidated damages cannot be too high or cannot be also unreasonable. So there should be some reasonable amount of the liquidated damages into the contract. So acceptance and final payment. So the acceptance of a completed project is customarily based on a final inspection performed by the owner's representative and conditioned upon the correction of any deficiencies noted. So when the work is nearly completed, so this step or this stage of the project starts, the owner's representative inspects the project and then certifies the work has been completed with the condition that some of the deficiencies which were noted before have been rectified. So the list of deficiencies to be corrected, which is prepared at the final inspection, is sometimes referred to as the punch list of records. If the facility or a portion thereof is substantially complete, the owner's representative will execute a certificate of substantial completion of the work. And the contractor may then request and receive a final progress payment for the completed portion of the work. So it means that the final progress payment can be received only when the certificate of substantial completion for the work has been issued by the owner's representative. However, sufficient retainage is withheld to ensure the correction of any remaining deficiencies. So with that final payment, there are still some retainages which are withheld. So maybe some of the deficiencies will be realized later on, and then that retainage amount can serve as a guarantee for the owner so that the contractor may come back to complete those remaining deficiencies just in case. But in any case, after some time that retainage amount is returned to the contractor. So the certificate of the substantial completion should clearly state the responsibilities of the contractor and the owner for maintenance, utility, service and insurance until final acceptance. And upon correction of all deficiencies on the punch list of record, the contractor should notify the owner's representative of this fact and submit a request for final payment together with any other documents required by the contract, such as the release of liens, an affidavit that all payrolls and bills connected with the project have been paid. So the release of liens means the contractor has already paid all their bills to their subcontractors and the suppliers. So then the contractor can request the final payment from the owner. and this is done after correction of all deficiencies in the product. So acceptance and final payment. When inspection confirms the correction of all deficiencies, the owner's representative will issue a final certificate of payment. The contract customarily provides a warranty against defective work for some period, usually 1 year. So any deficiencies discovered after the preparation of the punch list record should be handled under the warranty provision of the contract. And final payment and its acceptance by the contractor usually constitute a waiver of all claims by either the owner or the contractor, except for the unsettled liens and claims and deficiencies falling under the warranty provisions. So the final payment means that now the contractor cannot make any claim against the owner, or even the owner cannot make any claims against the contractor, except for some things unsettled liens. For example, if the contractor has some have not paid to their subcontractors or the suppliers for some time, and any of the items which are covered under the warranty provisions. So claims and disputes. So then what is a claim? A claim is a request by the contractor for a time extension or for additional payment based on the occurrence of an event beyond the contractor's control that has not been covered by a change order. So if something has not been settled by the change order, then the contractor can go for a claim. Okay, so claim is a next step to the change order. Okay, of course the change order can be from the owner, and in those situations the owner may be obliged to pay to the contractor some amount for the changes made, for the changes requested, and also for the extension of the time. But sometimes the contractor may not be satisfied with the change order, or the contractor will think that the change order which has been given by the owner should have been paid. Okay, so in those situations, when some dispute arises, then a claim, the change order, the claim, the main issue in the change order becomes the claim of the contractor. So the examples of such events include unexpected site conditions, delays in delivery of owner provided property, and changes directed by the owner. So the unexpected site conditions, the contractor can say that due to the unexpected site conditions, the contractor incurred extra expenses. But on the other hand, the owner may not accept this claim by the contractor. The owner may say that the site condition, the unexpected site conditions may not be true as the contractor is claiming. So therefore such kinds of disputes may occur, which often are accompanied by the claims. The usual construction contract empowers the owner's representative, who are the architect or the engineer or the government contracting officer, to decide on the validity of such claims. So normally the first person or the first party to consider those disputes or claims are the architects and the engineers. However, if the contractor is not satisfied with the decisions, the matter becomes a dispute, and then that dispute, first there is a claim, then it becomes a dispute. So the dispute then has to be settled. So disputes are then disagreements between the contractor and the owner over some aspects of the contract performance. So when there is a disagreement between the contractor and the owner, then there is a dispute. So in addition to unsettled claims, disputes may involve such matters as the substitution for specified materials, responsibility for delays in project completion, and the effect of change orders by the owner. So in recent years, there has been an increase in the use of alternate dispute resolution methods instead of taking the matter to the court, because taking the matter to the court may be too expensive both for the contractor and the owner. So therefore some alternate dispute resolution methods have been suggested. So when successful, these non-judicial techniques greatly reduce the time and expense involved in settling the dispute. So ADR methods have normally been found to be more be quicker and economical for both the contractor and the owner to resolve the disputes. So in ADR techniques some of the ADR techniques are including the negotiation, mediation, arbitration, non-binding mini trials, and neutral fact finding. So these are of course very legal terms over here. Probably the most common of these techniques are the negotiation and arbitration. So most commonly negotiation and arbitration is used. So negotiation is, in 1966, the American Arbitration Association, together with a number of professional organizations involved in construction, established arbitration procedures for the construction industry known as the Construction Industry Arbitration Rules. Under these procedures, one or more independent professionals are appointed to resolve the dispute. So in the arbitration rules, actually an independent professional or the expert is appointed who decides the validity of the claims and the disputes. Hearing procedures are less formal than those of a trial, and the arbitrators are not bound by the legal rules of the evidence. Okay, so arbitrators can make the decisions based on the merits of the case, but they are not necessarily bound by the legal rules of evidence, because in the courts there have to be more restrictions on providing the evidences. However, arbitrators may accept and consider more types of evidences than the courts will normally consider. Because the parties to the dispute must agree to the use of arbitration, no appeal of arbitration award is usually possible. So therefore, if some parties go to the arbitration process instead of the going to the court, which is called as the litigation, normally the decision of the arbitrator is non-appealable. Okay, so that was something about the dispute. So last topic is the contract termination. So although contract termination is usually envisioned as an adversary process, there are a number of non-adversary methods by which a contract may be terminated. Okay, so contract termination does not necessarily mean that there is a dispute or something has not been, the work has not been achieved and the contractor has been expelled from the project. It is not always like that. It is the meaning of termination is also including the normal completion of the project as well. So in that case, we can also say that the project has been contract may be terminated. So most construction contracts are terminated by satisfactory performance. So one method of contract termination. So completion of the project by satisfactory performance is also a kind of contract termination. So Other non-adversary methods of contract termination include the mutual agreement and impossibility of performance. Then, when both parties feel that the performance may not be achieved, that means the project may not be completed as a result of the fault of, as a result of the responsibility of the both parties, that means the contractor and the owner. So, in those non-adversary situation, the contract can also be terminated. So the principal adversary basis for contract termination is for breach of contract. However, termination of the contract is normally taken. The use of this term contract termination is normally in cases of the breach of the contracts as well. When, for example, the contractor fails to complete the project in time and the quality of the work is not completed, so then there is a breach of the contract. So contract termination is normally related to such conditions, although it is not necessary, as satisfactory completion or the mutual agreement also constitute the contract termination in some other cases. But for most cases, it is the principal adversary basis for the contract termination is for the breach of the contract. So either the owner or the contractor may terminate a contract for the breach of the contract. So when a breach happens, either of the party, contractor or the owner, may terminate the contract. So what happens then? The basis for the termination by the contractor based on the breach of the contract is usually the failure of the owner to make the specified progress payments, or the owner caused delays of the project for an unreasonable period of time. So this is the breach by the owner. Okay. Or the termination by the owner for the breach of the contract is most commonly due to the failure of the contractor to make reasonable progress on the project to default or to default by the contractor. So when the contractor fails to complete the project on time. And when the termination is due to the breach of contract by the owner, the contractor is generally held to be entitled to payment for the all work performed and expenses of demobilization and cancellation of orders plus profit. So when the termination is due to the breach of contract by the contractor, the contract commonly permits the owner to take possession of the work site and all on-site equipment and tools owned by the contractor, and to complete the project at the contractor's expense or surety's expense. So this is how the contract is terminated either by the owner or by the contractor. So that's all for this topic.